And now we return to the game. Back on the baseball diamond, as you probably remember, Oscar had just smacked the ball over Taser's head. As he watched his shot fly into the night, Oscar counted how many seconds he was keeping time stopped. This felt important, somehow, because if anybody ever demanded an exact number in the future, he felt like he should have one ready, though he really hoped nobody would ever ask. Since he'd already used up 1 second in his mom's kitchen, Oscar started at 2. 2 Mississippi. The ball slowly stopped rising and dropped, but ran out of steam and stopped in midair before it hit the ground. Hanging a few feet in front of second base, wow, Oscar thought sadly. Even when I cheat, I can't knock it out of the infield. He sighed and took off running across the diamond. 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi. He snatched the ball from the air above second base. 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7. He stopped at the edge of the outfield warning track and gingerly lifted the ball into the glare of the lights. Carefully, he let go, and just as he hoped, it hung where he'd put it, dangling tantalizingly above the fence in the clear summer night. 11 Mississippi, 12 Mississippi, 13 Mississippi, 14. Oscar Indigo ran back to home plate, picked up his bat, struck the pose of the guy he had always dreamed of being, the guy with his bat extended toward the horizon, waiting for his home run to drop over the outfield fence. Then he pressed the glowing green button, restarting the watch, activating time once again right after he got to 19 Mississippi. The spectators and Oscar's teammates and the opposing players blinked once and sat still for an instant, as if waking from a spell. Then all eyeballs in the park fixed curiously on Oscar, because the last thing anybody remembered, he'd been standing at the plate with his shaky knees clutching his bat while waiting for the baseball that was going to strike him out. His friends had been busily thinking up nice fibs to tell him, like, for instance, it wasn't important whether he won or lost, it was how he played the game. But now, everyone saw Oscar Indigo standing triumphantly in the batter's box, waving his bat at a distant baseball as it dropped into the itchy weeds behind the outfield fence. A cheer slowly rose from the east Mount Etna side. Looks like a walk-off home run from Oscar Indigo, Susie. Quite a feat, Vern. The crowd went wild. Oscar Indigo had become a hero, or so he told himself. We are the champions. Oscar didn't have a chance to worry about the implications of freezing time for a total of 19 seconds because the East Mount Etna Wildcats immediately poured onto the field, dogpiling him. He felt like he was in a movie. He felt like he'd just won the most valuable player trophy. He felt like somebody somewhere was about to name a marshmallow-filled candy bar after him. He felt squashed. "Let me up!" he cried. "Holy cats!" said Axel Machado, setting Oscar on his feet. "My little sister is bigger than you, and she's in 4th grade. How'd he hit that ball so far?" Oscar could only shrug and look at the sky and say, "Conditions must have been perfect." And despite the balmy summer breeze tickling the back of his neck, Oscar felt slightly wintry inside, because he'd just cheated, possibly on a large scale. How large? He didn't know. But as millions of stars twinkled down at him icily, something seemed out of place. He couldn't be sure, but he thought he saw a hole in the bottom of the Big Dipper. Just then, the heavy rumble of an old car sounded in the night, and he saw the black Cadillac that had been parked outside Miss Ellington's house pass like a shadow on the street. But his teammates' cheering soon drowned out his worries. Together they sang, "We are the champions," at the top of their lungs. Vern and Susie commented from inside his imagination. "Bona fide late-night inning heroics, Susie. You can't stop Oscar Indigo, Vern. You can only hope to contain him." Congratulations bubbled up all around Oscar. Congratulations sounded awfully different, he reflected, when they weren't just polite lies meant to spare his feelings. They would have sounded even better if he'd actually earned them. But he pushed that thought away. Once the cheering of the Wildcats' moms and dads had faded into the night, and the fact had sunk in that East Mount Etna Wildcats had actually just defeated the almighty West Mount Etna Yankees to take a 1-0 lead in the championship series. And more than all that, once everybody had gotten used to the idea that Oscar Indigo was responsible for this, Cameron Singh cried, "What do we do now?" "Line up," called Coach Ron. "Shake hands." The rival teams made two lines and snaked past one another, slapping high fives as tradition demanded. Everybody said what you always say after any game, no matter what. "Good game, good game, good game." Except for Oscar. He tugged his jersey straight as he made his way down the line to the end, where Taser stood. And when he reached the Yankees star, he said what he'd always promised himself he'd say to his opponent if he ever won anything. Congratulations. For some reason, the sound of this word caused total silence to fall over the diamond, the field, and the parking lot for a quarter mile in every direction. "What?" said Taser. Oscar had actually been rehearsing this moment at home for 5 years, playing make-believe games with the assistance of his friend Steve and a handful of imaginary baseball heroes. After hitting a fictional walk-off home run in the street in front of his house, the next thing Oscar always did was behave like a gracious winner. So he knew just what to say. "Great effort," he told Taser, extending his hand to shake. "You making fun of me?" Taser asked, staring straight into Oscar's eyes, ignoring his hand. Oscar slowly let it drop. "No," he stammered. I mean, you did a good job pitching." "You want me to punch you?" asked Taser, stepping very close, each large hand now a fist. "Hey!" cried an extremely tan lady wearing gold sunglasses, even though the sun had set an hour before. "Where's the umpire? That's unsportsmanlike conduct." "It's okay," Oscar told her. "He's just—" "I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about you," she said to Oscar. "Hey, umpire, this kid is taunting my son, Taser. Give him a fine or suspend him or whatever you do." "No," said Oscar. "I wasn't taunting. I just want to tell Taser he did a good job. I just wanted to tell him—" "Tell me what?" asked Taser. Oscar tried to think of the things people said to the Wildcats when they lost, or said to him when he bobbled to throw or whiffed in the batter's box. After he blurted out the first thought that came to mind. "It's not whether you win or lose, Taser," he said. "It's how you play the game." "See?" screeched Taser's mom. "He's taunting my little boy." Taser laughed nastily. "Sheesh," he said. "You're a loser even when you win." And with that, he shoved Oscar into the dirt. 15 minutes after the celebrations ended, the field lay black under the thickening clouds. The darkened stadium lights ticked as they cooled, and Oscar shivered, alone in the parking lot, hoping his mom would show up soon. Across the street, in the cool blue glow of the bus kiosk, sat Lourdes Mangubat. She glanced his way. Even though he'd never really spoken to her, and he'd just made her smash her toe, Oscar waved. She raised her arm as if to wave back, but at that moment the bus pulled up to the curb, hiding Lourdes, and when it pulled away, she was gone. "Now that was a bit of disappointment, Susie. I have to agree, Vern." Oscar also had to agree with the imaginary Vern. He shivered as he walked down the block to wait for his mother under a street lamp, and he couldn't shake a growing sense of foreboding. As soon as he leaned against the lamppost, the ball blinked out. This wasn't a good sign. Slowly, almost fearfully, Oscar slipped the giant gold watch out of his pocket again and regarded it nervously in the flicker of a far-away lightning. Maybe he was starting to realize it wouldn't have been a good idea to learn a little more about the watch, how the watch worked, before he pushed the big red button on top and halted time just so the Wildcats could beat the Yankees. 9:17:47, it read, as the second hand swept around the dial. 9:17:48, 9:17:49, 9:17:50. He didn't even need to check the world atomic clock to know that it now ran 19 seconds behind the rest of the world, and the solar system, and the galaxy, and the universe. A gust of wind blasted across the deserted parking lot. A flock of blackbirds squawked to life in the beech trees behind the stands. They screeched towards him through the sky, illuminated by a lightning flash, this one much closer than the earlier flickers. They appeared not to be birds at all. They looked like very small, flying dinosaurs? But just as suddenly as they appeared, they disappeared. It was only a trick of the light, Oscar told himself. The wind now held steady. Thunder rolled. Suddenly, a dazzling flash blinded him from very nearby, half a block away. He flinched. A sound began to grow like a gorilla jamming trash cans into a wood chipper, and it soon became apparent that the glare wasn't lightning. It was headlights, or one headlight anyway, approaching at high speed, aiming straight for him. Tires screeched, a horn honked, and a small, rattly car ground to a halt at the curb. At the wheel sat Oscar's mom. Just then, rain began to pelt Oscar in buckets and sheets. He fumbled with the obstinate door latch, scrambled into the car. His mother pulled away from the curb and made a U-turn in the opposite direction from the neat yards and lamp-lit streets of West Mount Etna, crossing the invisible line into East Mount Etna. Oscar gazed out the car window at mostly empty shopping centers, containing only sad and neglected thrift shops that sold used clothes to families who would wear them a while and then bring them back to be sold again. And he watched whole blocks of boarded-up houses slide by outside the glass, and he saw a factory surrounded by a rusty chain-link fence, surrounded by a padlocked gate. "I'm sorry, honey. I couldn't get away from work," said his mother. "At least I got here before the storm hit, sort of." "Thanks, Mom," said Oscar, shivering as he glanced through the windshield at the strengthening rain. His anxiety must have shown on his face. "Don't worry about the game," said his mother, noticing his look. "You'll do better next time. After all, you had to play the Yankees. They're the best, and it's the championship series. Nobody thought you guys would ever get this far." Oscar could tell his mother had expected the Wildcats to lose, and had prepared a list of comforting things to say. "Mom," said Oscar, turning toward her, "we won." "Good one," she said, laughing. "You're such a great kid. No matter what, your sense of humor always shines." "I'm not joking," Oscar said. "We beat the Yankees. We're ahead in the series." "I've had a long day, Buster," his mother replied. "Don't mess with me." "I'm not messing with you," said Oscar, grinning finely, even as the rain fell ferociously, flooding the streets here and there. "We won." "Really? How?" asked his mother, a hint of disbelief rising in her voice, although she smiled brightly to disguise it. "It wasn't easy. Lourdes got hurt, and she's our star," said Oscar, "but I guess we just put it all together right at the end when it counted." "So the Wildcats scored a bunch of points?" said Oscar's mom. "We call them runs in baseball, Mom," said Oscar. "The final score was 2-1. It was really exciting." "And this was all in the fourth quarter?" asked his mother. No, Mom, baseball has innings, said Oscar, not quarters. He had only been having these conversations with her since he was 7. One day, he still hoped she'd figured out the great sport of baseball, as in, you scored runs, not points, and you played innings, not quarters. In the meantime, the overall concept still baffled him. And he didn't quite know why, but he decided to leave out the part about Lourdes's toe and all the Wildcats' backups being at the beach and his getting put into the game and going to the plate and smacking a homer. And, of course, he didn't mention the watch he'd hidden in his palm. We scored in the bottom of the 9th. We won right at the end, said Oscar. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, cried his mom. It's over. The crowd goes nuts. Wildcats are victorious. Yeah, said Oscar, something like that. Except there's no clock in baseball, so the final seconds don't tick off. That's it, cried Oscar's mom, sawing her steering wheel viciously to the left and slaloming through a small lake in the middle of the road. We're going to Rossini's to celebrate. Are you sure? Said Oscar. We haven't been there since before Dad. The light at the intersection ahead suddenly turned from green to red, skipping yellow altogether as if something had happened to its sense of order and time. His mother slammed on the brakes, and the Corolla skidded to a halt. Crazy, muttered his mom, craning her neck to stare up at the light. I mean, began Oscar, and stopped. He hadn't meant to bring up his father. It had just slipped out. But it was true. They hadn't dined at Rossini's since his dad had left home. And Rossini's was the place where the three of them used to celebrate. Birthdays, holidays, and the time when Oscar got the part of Christmas present in A Christmas Carol. Mr. Rossini, short and round, served wine for the adults and bubbly water for the kids. Mr. Rossini's menu featured 5 kinds of spaghetti. At Mr. Rossini's, the servers were all opera singers from Philadelphia who waited tables on their days off to earn money to pay their rent, and, in addition to that, just plain loved singing, so much they surrounded your table while you enjoyed your dessert to serenade you in Italian. And Mr. Rossini kept his restaurant open until 11 every night, brightly lit and full of music. Even when thunderstorms raged outside, it was truly a place of celebration. The last time they'd visited had been Oscar's 11th birthday. When the singer sang Happy Birthday, Oscar's mom had taken the high part and performed it more beautifully than the opera stars. Mr. Rossini had even said he would hire her to work there if she applied, and Oscar had always remembered the way her eyes lit up at the thought. The hope, as she gazed around at the beauty and the bustle, that she might be part of it all. His mother felt about singing the way he felt about baseball. But then his dad had left them only a few days later to chase a dream. He'd explained it all to Oscar. The dream wasn't more important than his family, he said. It was just different. He wanted to start his own company. It would be big, located in several countries, stretching worldwide, which was why he had to leave Oscar and his mom to achieve it. And although the last part didn't really make sense to Oscar, he tried his best to understand. This had happened a year ago, and ever since, Oscar's mother had grown quiet and started working as a cashier at the gas station during the day and a waitress in a cafe in the evening. There had been nothing more to celebrate, and Oscar was still waiting for her to take Mr. Rossini up on his offer, apply to work at his fabulous restaurant, but he'd started to lose hope. The Wildcats lead the championship series, his mom said admiringly, breaking Oscar out of his reverie. Wow, just wow. Of course, we have to go to Rossini's. She parked her wheezing Corolla in front of the restaurant's plate glass window, which was sheeted with rainwater, adorned with 3-foot-high fire engine red letters edged in gold, shining in the midst of East Mount Etna's gloom. Rossini's. Only, the thing about Rossini's right now, she began and fell silent. Oscar heard the catch in her voice, and he saw her eyes dart toward the BBT Bank ATM and the wall next door to the restaurant. Spaghetti marinara at Rossini's cost $14. 2 orders cost $28. Oscar and his mom didn't have much money. His mom's eyes traveled toward the dashboard of the Corolla. "See if there are any quarters in the ashtray," she instructed. "Maybe we can just get a pizza," said Oscar nonchalantly, digging for coins. "To go." Rossini's had takeout. A large cheese pie cost $9.99. Breadsticks cost $1.59. "We can call it in right now and enjoy it at home." Not too many coins to be found. A few pennies and a nickel or two, a couple of quarters mired in some ancient gum. $2.12 total. "No," said his mother. "This is your big night. This is what you've been waiting for." Actually, though, the more Oscar thought about it, the more he had to admit that this wasn't his big night. Because his real, live, bona fide big night featured a true home run, not one he'd hit with time frozen, not one he was afraid to tell his mother about. He felt the watch ticking in his pocket. Actually, this wasn't the night he'd been waiting for at all. "Mom," Oscar said, "I'm not that hungry. Maybe we could just order breadsticks to go. In fact, that's kind of how I prefer to celebrate, if you don't mind." He could see Steve Brinkley and his mom and dad inside the restaurant on the far side of the rain-streaked glass, installed in a corner booth, asking their waiter for spectacular things. If you really want to, said his mom, doing her best to hide her relief. "I guess that's all right." "I really want to," said Oscar. "I'll order from here, and you can run inside when they're ready," said his mom, digging her phone out of her purse. Oscar got soaked sprinting inside to pick up the breadsticks, and the paper bag got soaked when he ran back out to the car. So did the breadsticks. He sat them on the dashboard to dry. Oddly, at the very moment his mother pulled out of the parking lot, the rain stopped. Completely. As if somebody in the stratosphere had turned off a spigot. 19 seconds later, give or take, the moon and stars reappeared. Oscar and his mother rolled down the windows of the Corolla and belted "We Are the Champions" at the top of their lungs. Oscar's contribution sounded more like howling, truth be told, but his mom sang, really sang, and people at stoplights cocked their ears to listen. At least one good thing had come from stopping time. His mother was singing again, and Oscar couldn't help feeling good about that. Later that night, Oscar stood in his backyard watching the moon dangle above the trees. He thought about the amazing fact that it didn't appear to move at all, while at the same time it blazed around Earth at a speed of 2,288 miles per hour. Dr. Soul leaped onto the porch railing beside him and contemplated the night too. Oscar picked up his old splintery practice bat and imagined a baseball diamond stretching out before him. In the darkness of his yard, reaching from his back porch at the edge of Tuscarora Woods, he put ghost runners on the bases, the kind you use to hold your place while you take your next turn at bat, and he put make-believe opponents in the field. They wore the uniform of the old-timey Boston Braves, which was weird because they were in his imagination, and up until that moment, Oscar hadn't known what a Boston Braves uniform even looked like. The players shimmered, eerily like specters. Oscar shuddered. It was getting a little spooky out there. "I thought things would be different, Dr. Soul," said Oscar, shaking off his shivers. "I thought when I finally hit a home run and won the big game, life would change. I thought I would finally know what it feels like to be a baseball hero, but I blew it. I'm still just Oscar Indigo." With his bat, Oscar swatted an imaginary home run. Almost. Because one of the ghostly outfielders, who seemed slightly more real than the rest, managed to leap up, snatch it out of the air before it was cleared to the fence, a surprise feat. Dr. Soul said nothing in reply to Oscar's lament, of course, but as he gazed at Oscar, absent-mindedly licking his rear paw and rubbing his ear with it, Oscar knew what he was thinking. How would you know hitting a home run didn't change anything? You didn't hit one. You've got a point, Oscar murmured. And the look Dr. Soul gave in reply was, besides, I wouldn't be so sure nothing has changed. He turned his attention toward the talented outfielder, who glanced over his shoulder and disappeared into the woods. The moon still seemed to hang motionless in the sky, although of course it must have moved. Inside, Oscar's mother crooned softly to herself. No happy songs this time. Nothing about champions. She sang a tune she'd made up herself, one that had no words but was more beautiful because of that, like a whippoorwill singing its lonely songs in the empty night. Later, inside the quiet house, Dr. Soul leaped onto Oscar's bed, stalked across the covers, curled up on Oscar's chest, set himself on purr, and fell asleep. Oscar clutched the watch in his fist beneath his pillow, because something told him it'd be a good idea to know exactly where it was at all times, and he promised himself he'd take it back to Eleanor Ethel Ellington first thing in the morning and ask her politely never to give him anything like it ever again.